Our next speaker is Miss Susan Yu. She is a co-founding member of Mesereau Yu LLP. Mr. Mesereau is here with us as well. She speaks Russian, Korean, and Japanese, and graduated cum laude from Syracuse. She sat next to Michael Jackson, which is pretty cool. She sat next to him at trial when he was acquitted, which is even cooler, I think. And she's here to talk to you about a very interesting case. It's a case that we're not, kind of case that we're not unfamiliar with here in this district. And I don't know how many folks were able to go through the materials, but we're talking about an 86-page indictment. She tells me that her client, there was really no plea offer, that he was facing 30 to 35 years on this case. 8 of the co-defendants pled guilty on this case, and I can assume, although I'm interested to hear whether or not they were cooperating against Mr. Babajan. At the end of it, everybody was convicted except for their client. Congratulations to the two of you. And eventually, there were some counts remaining. He ended up pleading guilty to a misdemeanor, and I assume he's continued forward with his life. So I'm excited to hear about this presentation. I will say, if you have not read her opening statement, it humanized this gentleman, which is difficult to do in a transcript. I was very impressed, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Miss Yu. Please join me to welcome Miss Yu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. It really is an honor to be here. As I mentioned briefly during the lunch session, when Dennis Terrell invited me to speak, I couldn't say no. I mean, I was just so impressed with the private boutique public defender law firm here in Cleveland and the impressive background of all of the lawyers in your district. It really is an honor and privilege to be here. I'd like to begin by sharing with you my personal background before I delve into this case, because I believe that trial lawyers' strategies in the courtroom before a jury are always determined by who you are, where you come from, your life experiences, your insights that you have, things that have evolved over the years. So I'd like to briefly go over my personal background and then delve into the case. That'll help you understand why I look at the things the way that I do, why I looked at the evidence the way I did, and why I looked at jurors a certain way. It certainly had a tremendous impact and influence in the way I try cases in the courtroom. Okay, I say here a multicultural venue. Certainly Los Angeles is a diverse, quote unquote, diverse. We love that term these days. Everybody's screaming for diversity. Everybody wants multiculturalness. And it's quite interesting how everybody wants to be a victim these days. My personal background certainly, I think, was multicultural. I grew up in San Francisco in the 70s, lived in my early years in a part of San Francisco called Pacific Heights. Beautiful section, pretty affluent, and my parents, we were immigrants from Korea. My father was born in Korea. My mom, who passed away recently, she was half Japanese. Didn't learn that until a couple of years ago because she had to keep that a secret. The tension between the Japanese and Koreans, as you may know, is pretty similar to Jews and the Germans. So it was a very controversial mix. And my grandmother, her mom, grew up in northern part of Japan, and we all suspect that she was part Russian. So I have about maybe, I don't know, 6% Russian in me. So I'm a mud. We lived in Pacific Heights, a very affluent part of San Francisco, not because we were all that affluent, but because my parents had 4 kids and we couldn't get an apartment in those days. If you had 4 kids, you have to pay extra for it. So we ended up living in a very nice apartment in San Francisco in Pacific Heights, which was next to Chinatown. And in those days, if you are Asian, you go to school in Chinatown. Well, I'm not Chinese. And I ended up going to school in Chinatown, never learned English in that school because everybody's speaking Chinese, Burmese, Thai, everybody on the planet, from the Asian planet, they were all dumped there. It was quite interesting that the struggle that I faced, even though we had nothing but Asians, is not really any different than multicultural setting where you have different races. People are people, and everybody has different kinds of issues. Everybody was claiming they're victims of somebody or something, and I was definitely no exception, because kids were always making fun of the Koreans or the Chinese or the Japanese, and it was quite incredible. It was, and I was learning Chinese more than English there, and my dad thought, we got to do something about that. I had amazing parents, just amazing parents. My dad is a right-wing Republican. My mom was, she passed away, was a left-wing feminist. She had an amazing father who was a socialist and a feminist in the 1920s and 30s, and ended up marrying my grandmother, who was Japanese. And he did so even when his father told him that he would disown him and disinherit him with all of the assets. He did it anyway. My mom's father was just an amazing person. He encouraged my mom to become and do anything she wanted, and my mom wanted to become a journalist in Germany, or a pilot maybe, or a medical doctor. Anything but a housewife. My father, I have never met anyone in my life with the kind of strong will and strength that any human being can possess. I have never met, he was like Superman growing up. Just by looking at him, I felt strong. Just an incredible person. The two would cancel each other out during election times, and they would have intense political debates about who was right or wrong. My mom would say the Republicans are insensitive, they are greedy, corrupt, only care about money, they have no social, moral responsibilities. My dad would say Democrats complain too much. They're lazy. They whine. Both, I thought, were right in their own ways. My dad's motto, just do it, get it done. And don't complain. You have no excuse for anything. No excuse for failure, just get it done. My mom screamed, change. Obama wasn't born then, but she said change is a must. It is not an option. You go for it. Become anything you want, anybody you want. She questioned the aristocratic tradition of Asian cultures and said, you know, the difference between Asian culture and Western culture is that in Asian culture, they tell you what to think. In Western culture, they ask you what you think. The aristocracy has failed us. There are too many hypocrites. Question everything at all times. Well, what did my parents do for a living? We owned a Jewish deli in San Francisco. Where? In the Castro Theater District. The Castro District, as you may know, is the gay capital of California, if not the United States. My mom had a great friend who was gay, and they just hit it off. Yes, our deli was kosher. We even had a rabbi, had to get rid of him because he was getting way too expensive. Yes, our matzo balls were fresh, not out of a jar. And don't fool me, I know one when it's fresh. I ended up going to a middle school, what was then called junior high school, in the inner city of San Francisco. Back then, they were experimenting what was called reverse busing in the early 70s. Reverse busing meaning kids from better part of the town would go to the inner city, and kids from the inner city would go to the better town. And you mix them up. Well, I didn't realize that James Lake Junior High School had about 80% of their grads going through the prison system. For me, every day was like going to prison. For me, every day was about how do I survive? So what do we do? To survive, I had to tell the kids that Bruce Lee was my brother. And actually worked, because my older sister who went to James Lake with me, she was quite a fighter. One day she got in a fight and she won. And she was like Simba, you know, of Lion King. And I benefited from her fighting abilities, although I didn't know how to fight. But we quickly said, Bruce Lee, that's where we got the mastery. Our brother Bruce Lee taught us how to fight. We eventually moved to a part of town, a suburb of San Francisco called Hillsborough. It's a very nice area. Homes are very, very nice. Coincidentally, we lived a block away from Patty Hearst's house during the SLA, as many of you may remember. I used to ride my bike over to their house to see what was going on and to get a glimpse of Patty Hearst, and it was a fascinating time. I went to a school near Hillsborough called Burlingame High. There, I was quite disillusioned, because by the time I got to Burlingame, things around me were just so confusing. I had just gone to all Chinese or all Asian school where nobody spoke English, everybody spoke their languages. Tension was great there. I go to a school in the inner city where it was like prison, getting beat up or being threatened to get beat up. Then I come to this school. You have a lot of ivory tower people, and quite disappointing in many ways. Very bougie and very elitist, which I wasn't too impressed with. So instead of hanging out with the kids at this school, I decided that I was going to hang out with my mentors. And the mentors I had, they were just great. The first mentor I had was, I remember, Karl Marx. I was about 15, and I read the Communist Manifesto, in one of the classes I took. It was a public school, great academic program. I really felt like I was the vanguard of the proletariat. And the dreaming about the possibility of conquering in my own imaginary world. It was just fascinating. And it was just, it really gave me a lot of excitement. And the one author that I really, really liked and admired was George Orwell, because in reading one of his many, many books, The Animal Farm, everything made sense. Yeah. Well, it's true. Wherever you go, wherever I go, everybody's claiming that they're equal, but everybody really wants to be more equal than others. That's human nature, I thought. Wait a minute. People really don't want to be equal. Nobody does. And there are just so many hypocrites. Eventually, as I got a little older, I was captivated by Camus and existentialism. The stranger, the rebel, the plague. I love the rebel. Yeah, I'm a rebel because I like to say no. I didn't learn that from Nancy Reagan, but just say no. And the one person who had tremendous impact as a young person was this wonderful political theorist, Hannah Arendt. One of the most powerful minds you'll ever come across. You read her book, my gosh, you're so jealous. I wish I could write like her. Where did she get these insights, these wonderful ideas, and the way she looks at the world and things? Just captivating. And it is true. She sends the same message that Orwell sent. Nobody really wants to be equal. If you look at radical revolutionaries, they're the first to become a conservative the day after revolution. It is so true. Then, of course, I don't know of anybody who speaks in public more powerfully than Martin Luther King, the greatest orator of all time, but also a kind human being that I felt deeply in touch with. Dalai Lama. I'm not Buddhist, or I don't have any particular religion, and I agree with him. There can only be one religion, kindness. And I find a lot of peace and solitude by listening to this man. He is just so balanced and so humane. And I look up to him because I could never be like that. Dostoevsky, one of my favorite authors, and the message he conveyed was truth is no question stranger than fiction. And that certainly is the case when we try cases, evidence. And a lot of the things we see in the courtroom, whether so-called they're truthful or not, they really are stranger than fiction. And Gandhi, no question, we cannot exist if we exclude others. And that's the funny thing about so-called diversity these days, the way people are using that term. To me, every so-called diverse organization, when they say diversity, they're including everybody but white male. And no question, white men represent the power and they have authority. But quite frankly, the ones who have really helped me from the time I was small happen to be white men. No doubt, all races, not just white men, but I can't say the white system failed me, the white men failed me, or any particular race. For that matter, I've had tension and struggles in every environment. It didn't matter. Racism, sexism, homophobia, they're not unique to this culture, this country. They're far worse in other countries.